Good afternoon, it's Kale. I'm going to do my second review for the Sunsword series on the Uncrowned King. It is the weekend, so I've got my hubby here, who you may hear. He's out in the kitchen making a quiche, and the dogs are running around because he's here. So you may hear some like background noise. So just got some music going, and hopefully it'll go okay. So as usual, it's very casual, very informal review, kind of overview type of thing of this book. It's not anything professional or whatever. I'm just going to go over what I think about it, what's involved in it, what new characters you get introduced to, and just kind of continue sharing my love for this series. So, The Uncrowned King is the second book in the Sunsword series. I can hear them running around. They are so bad. Anyhow, so it's paperback, published by Daw Books. It came out in September of 1998. It's 687 pages. I have the book here. It's not as worn as the Broken Crown, but it is, it's been through quite a bit. It's been through kind of a lot. It's a little battered. And just as an aside, I had shown you before, like how my copy of The Broken Crown has just been totally thrashed from me reading it so many times. I did manage to find a replacement, and I got it through Amazon. They sent it, and the cover was torn on one of the corners, so I had to send that back and then find somewhere else I could get it. So it finally did come in, and I have a fresh, brand new copy of The Broken Crown. It's not like new, but it's pretty good condition. It's a little, pages are a little yellowed or whatever, but it's in way better condition than the other ones. So I'm happy about that. So let's get on to the Uncrowned King. Now, the character that this book focuses on is not from The Broken Crown, really. He might be slightly mentioned there, but this is about Valadin de Leon. Now, let's see if I can explain this, and it's going to be like a kind of a longer list of characters. There's a lot of people introduced in this book, so let's see how I can explain it. First, let's talk about, maybe before I really get into about him and what he's about and so on and so forth, I can just kind of go over, turn these pages, what the story's actually about in the second book. I've got a dog breathing at my door going silly. So Valadin is a hostage in Esselion, and he is the son of the leader of the Dominion, which is the country in the south, and his mother is a slave. So she's not like a full-blood, high level, woman in their society. She's just a slave. So he's kind of considered, he's not a bastard. He has parents, but he's just not considered a full son of the leader of the Dominion. So when they send him up north to become a hostage, they don't really care because they don't consider him a full son of the Tiragar. Tiragar is the leader of the Dominion. So he's up there. There's some other hostages from the south along there with him, which I will mention in a minute. And his father, as I mentioned before, gets deposed down in the south. And so the entire Leon clan is killed, except for him. And you can see his picture there on the cover. And so he decides that he needs to prove himself worthy of the throne down in the south. So up in the north, they have a challenge. It's kind of it's like an annual competition of sort of like physical skills, warrior skills, things like fighting with the sword, archery, horseback riding, a long distance marathon, things like that, swimming. And whoever wins the competition overall is considered, a great champion. And it's considered a great champion in the South and in the North, but mostly it's a Northern competition. So he decides that he's going to enter into this competition. Of course, that makes his people that are advising him very unhappy, because he's taking the risk of being killed, being hurt, thrown from the horse, so on and so forth. But he's very determined, and actually he's a really super badass character. So he's very determined, and he's going to go ahead and go with it. So in the meantime, the Kiali, or the kin, or demons, whatever you want to call them, are still doing their machinations to control power in the South and to defeat the North. So when they hear that he's alive, he's going to put a kink in the works in their grab for power in the South to control the South, so they want to kill him. Okay, so he's, under the threat of death from these demons. And then a gentleman comes up from the South. His name is Sir Anton. And his family was killed by Valadin's father. So he has this vengeance vow that he's got going on against the Leons. So he travels up north, brings some of his students. He's a sword master. He teaches sword fighting down in the South. And he's going to come up to the north, and he's going to assassinate Valadin under his little vengeance thing. So everybody wants to kill him. He's not aware yet about Sir Anton and his little thing, but he does know that the demons want him dead. So the other part of the book, the other story that's going on, is a house war. So in the north, which I probably mentioned before, they don't do clans in the sense of blood. It's not blood ties. It's more like vows of loyalty, and you admire the tenants of that house, what they stand for, things like that. And so they're bound to each other. You swear a vow to that house, but you are not blood related for the most part. So in the north, there's a house called Terrafin, and Terrafin is probably the leading house in the Northern Kingdom, and they hold a lot of power, and they do things like control merchant routes and things like that. And the kings come to them and talk, and they rule the country, right? But there's a house war going on. So that house war story is kind of interwoven with the story that's going on with Valadin and his test of skill that he wants to go through in the King's Challenge. So that's kind of the story. It's kind of going over him wanting to do the challenge, the assassination attempts on him from the demons and from humans, and so this is what he's having to go through. Okay, so let me turn this page over. Okay, we're going to talk back at the beginning of my notes. So we talked about Valadin, and he's a hostage. Okay. And we talked a little bit about Sir Anton. His name is Sir Anton de Guevara. He's a hero of the Dominion. He has won the King's Challenge before, which is why he can bring his students up, because he's familiar with what you need to do to win the challenge. And so he brings them up, and they're kind of like his cover story for, him. He's going to try and kill Valadin. And he's an elderly man now. He probably won the challenge maybe like 10, 15 years ago or so, 20 years ago. And he's older now, but he's still torn and haunted by the death of his wife and his children. It might have been just one child. I don't know. Anyhow, another main character in the story is Aiden. Aiden is about, I think maybe like 10 years old. He's a young boy. He's really pale. He has like kind of whitish hair, real like pale blonde hair. He's poor. He's from part of the city in Esali, and it's called Averlin. And part of Averlin has these things called the 100 Holdings, and they're like little like mini suburbs within the city, and they're kind of like they range from like more money to like less money. So he comes from the poorer holdings, and he's very interested in sword fighting. So he wants to watch all of these men compete in this King's Challenge. So this is how he meets Sir Anton, and then they have their story going forward. And he doesn't know that this gentleman that he's talking to while they're watching these people practice their sword skills, he doesn't know that the gentleman standing next to him is Sir Anton, who he really admires because he's won the King's Challenge several times. Sir Anton brings, as I mentioned, some of his students up with him, and the two most important ones are Carlo and Andaro, and they get intertwined in the story with Valadin at the end. I'm not going to say what happens at the end because I'm trying to avoid spoilers. There might be some little ones here and there, but like main spoilers I'm going to try and avoid. Okay, so those are Sir Anton's students. And then the leader of House Terrafin, her name is Amareus Handrinus a Terrafin. So when you're a member of a house, they put an A in front of the house name. So you would be a Terrafin, or a Calicar, or a Barilia. So it depends on the house name, and they just put an A, and you kind of get rid of your regular last name. Like, you don't use it because now you're a sworn member of a house. So that can cause problems in families because you're basically like disavowing your family to have a new family, and they don't like that. So anyhow, but it's just part of their society. Some people don't like it, but most people accept it. So anyhow, so Amareus is the leader of Terrafin. Her title is the Terrafin. So she's the Terrafin. And she's old. I would say maybe she's about maybe late 70s, maybe mid 70s, maybe somewhere in there. But she's, starting to lose some political authority amongst her upper council members. They're seeing that she's getting old, she's going to die soon type of thing. And so they're fighting over who's going to take her place. So that story is going on. And then we've got one of the main characters across all of the series so far, except for maybe like the Hunter books. But we've got Jewel Marquess a Terrafin. Now, Jewel is seerborn, which means she can see the future. Not always reliably, but she has the ability to see the future. And she has another ability. My dog is barking at my door. She has the ability to kind of sense when demons are present or something's wrong that's related to demon presence in the area. She has that sense about her. So then we have her den. And then Jewel's den is kind of like her little gang. They're like her family. That's Rosie. So she is basically parentless. Both her parents died, so she's basically an orphan. And she's gathered these kids around her, and they've grown up together, and those are her den. And she's lost some of them, but those are other stories. That's the House War series. But in here, she's got Teller, Finch, Carver, Jester, Angel, and Aaron. And those are like her family. They're her den. That's what they call it, the den. That's kind of like street language because, they have like little gangs of kids running around in the poor areas of town. And so they form these little dens to protect each other. And so she had her own den, and she's the leader of that den. But now they're all in the Terrafin mansion. Yeah, it's like a mansion, like a compound. Then I won't say but semi-part of her den is Avendar Galeas, and Avendar is her domuses. Now the domuses is kind of like a butler, a lady in waiting, could be a guy, but like a lady in waiting and a guardian protector. So Avendar has the ability to wield magic, and his background is a mystery. Nobody really knows anything about him. But he is her domuses, and they've been together for a long time. Jewel joined House Terrafin. She was about 16, and now in this story here, she's at like 32, 33. So they've been together a long time. But he can do magic, and he's a really good warrior type person, and he's really strong. So he's with them. Okay, then we've got Devin a Terrapin, and it's spelled just like my son's name. It's pretty cool. So Devin a Terrapin, he's a mage, and he's a member of the Astari. The Astari are these protectors of the kings of Esselion, and they know how to wield magic, and they're like a combination of like a mage, an assassin, and diplomat, and a fighter. They're like all those kind of combined, and they protect the kings. But he's in a Terrapin because he's working with Terrapin in conjunction with working for the kings. So he doesn't really have like torn loyalties, but he's perceived as having torn loyalties, part to Terrapin, part to the kings. Then we've got Moritz. Moritz is the Terrapin's domuses. Then we move over to another house. It's called Kalikar. So it's House Kalikar. So the leader of the Kalikar house is Elora. And her title is the Kalikar. So just like the Terrapin, she's the Kalikar. She has a group of soldiers. They're kind of like military. So she has a group of soldiers. They're called the Black Ospreys. And the head of the Black Ospreys is Primus Duarte. That's his title. He's a Primus. So you have a Primus, a Centrus, something else. There's another one. But he's like their leader. And they're kind of like low lives, little criminals, whatever. And he's kind of saved them from either being executed or being in jail, and he's like trained them up to be a small little military unit, but they don't like following rules, so they're pretty cool. Part of Kalikar and not part of Kalikar is Kirill Diashef. So Diashef is an actual southern last name, so they use the D-I, right? And then they use the E-N, the N, so like Diora and Leon. So she is a Diashef, but that's not actually like a clan name in the South. It's actually the name of a person. Rosie, quit it. It figures. This is what happens. She's the newest member of the Ospreys, and she's probably about 20, maybe 20 years old. She's fairly young. But she's also a member of Jewel's Den because she made friends with Jewel. So that kind of relationship is very interesting. Hold on a second. I'm going to, mute this for a second so I can talk to her. Hold on. Rosie, go away. Did I mute it? No, I didn't. I just said, Rosie, go away. Oh, that dog. For being so little, she can be really noisy. So anyhow, so Kirill is the daughter of the Lord of Night. So she's a half god and a half human. Okay. Ashef is the name of the woman who raised her. And that story, a lot of that story's in The Broken Crown. So she's obviously super powerful. I mean, she's like the daughter of a god. But she's the daughter of an evil god. So she can see like shadows. She can see like the evil inside somebody or the bad thoughts inside somebody. She can sense all that. She can sense the demons when they're nearby. So they actually ask her to help them track the demons when they're in the city because she has, she can sense them. She's actually killed quite a few of them. So she's really powerful. But she has to be careful because if she goes too far into her shadow side, she can totally become that and lose her humanity. So she's always fighting a battle internally. Then we also have Ramiro de Calesta. He's also from the South. He is the Tiragnate, which is the name of a title of a leader of one of the tours, that little mini countries within the South. He's the leader of Calesta, and he's called the Tiragnate. So he's involved. Okay, he came up from the South to support Valaden in his claim to acquire the Southern throne. So he's there to be a supporter. Then Sarah Alina de Lamberto, and Lamberto is another clan. That dog. She's also a hostage in the North, and she's become an advisor to Valaden. So she has a certain style about her, a certain personality, and he trusts her to help him navigate these diplomatic and political waters that he's found himself in once his whole family got killed off. Then we have, obviously, the demons, the Kiali, and mostly in this book it's going to be about Isladar and Lord Etridian. So they're kind of like part of the Lord's Fist, which is like his lieutenants. Then we have Calandras. He's a bard of Sennial College, and he's also a trained assassin. And then we have some of the mages that are up in Esselai. We have Marilon, Aphaniel, and Sigrun Melithas. So, in these assassination attempts that are going on against Valaden, we see Calandras, Marilon, Jewel, Curiel, Devon, Aterafin. All of these people are helping to protect Valaden against these demons. Oh my gosh. I just, wait a second. Hold on. I had to let her in. That's just all there was to it. Otherwise, she was going to stop barking. Okay. Go lie down. Maybe she'll just lay down in her bed. I can get back to this. So, yeah, I'm sorry about that. That's just life with dogs. What can I say? So, when the fighting starts in House Terrafin, when that succession war starts, they start killing off the people who want to take over rule of the house. They start kind of killing off the Terrafin's kind of main supporters. And one of them, I think her name is Alea, or Aliyah, however you want to say it. So one of the quotes from the book, where it says, "There should have been rain, storm, something that showed the displeasure of the heavens at the unjust, the unfair, the unacceptable passing of a decent woman. There should have been mourning, and if not that, then at least weather drizzly and gray enough to keep people from good cheer and ease." So that's kind of like how a little bit of her style. So those are the main characters going on. There's a lot of new characters introduced in this second book. I understand why it's like that, and it does take a little bit to remember who's who, but you just get to learn them. And with any epic fantasy that's a multi-book series, you get to know who the characters are. So you've got that political intrigue, conflict, trained assassins. Now what is going on at the door? Magical threats and fights, shifting of loyalties. Knock it off. Family relations, things like that. And I definitely became more invested in the story as I read more. I didn't read more and go, I'm not interested in this. I became more and more invested in the story and the characters. There's still a great mix of strong female characters. Again, they do that with, she does that without divesting the men of any agency. So you've got strong females, strong males. I'm not saying it's perfectly balanced 50-50, but they're there. Nobody can complain about that. The characters are well written. They're defined. You get to know them as individuals. You get to know some of their backstories. They're not like little, video game NPCs walking around. For the most part, I would say you probably learn about 90% of the characters in the books. One of the nitpicks that I have is that Jewel's character can seem a little, I want to say young, or I don't want to say childish, but young. So it kind of seems like she's not acting like her age. So she's in her 30s. So she's in her early 30s. So sometimes the way she reacts is kind of as if she's still a teenager. But the only way to understand that, why it's like that, is if you read the first book of The House War, which explains her past. and introduces her as a character, and you get her when she's young, like maybe like 10, and so you get to understand what happens to her. Kind of sets off part of her personality to remain in that age, and she's aware of that. So, but it's because of what happened to her. So you have to read the book. You have to read the book to find out what that is. So even though it's like a little nitpick, it's really like, it's okay, because if you read the other book, you understand, oh, that's why she's like that, you know. The other issue is that sometimes you can't really tell like who's carrying the dialogue. But I think that's part of Michelle's writing style, is that she doesn't always say, you know, John said, Calandra said, Diora said. Like, she doesn't have like their name all like just in there all the time. So sometimes it'll just be a line of dialogue, and you have to kind of, if you're reading, you got to pay attention. Well, you should be anyway. Pay attention, and you can see who's speaking. You'll know. So again, it just made me want to continue on into the series. And by the time I found this series, I believe all of the books were published, if I recall correctly. So the next book is called The Shining Cord, and that was already out. So I was like looking forward to reading that third book. So again, I recommend these. You know, they don't always start off fast. So if you're an impatient person, I don't recommend reading the book. But if you're willing to learn and grow with the series and really fully enjoy like what she has to offer, definitely. So I'm going to finish off this video that has been interrupted by my puppies. I think she's behind me. Let me look. Yeah, she's in her bed. She thinks she kind of knows I'm like, knock it off. So in the beginning of the book, the beginning starts with Aiden, his story, and his meeting with Sir Anton, and how they both love sword fighting. And it's like a passion of theirs, and so they're kind of getting to know each other. You know, Sir Anton, obviously, he's a hero. And here he's talking. You know, he looks down. There's this poor white-haired, sunburnt kid, just fascinated by the sword fighting and wanting to see the warriors, and you know, having all these dreams about becoming a warrior, and so on and so forth. And his mom passed away, and his dad is crippled because he got in a work accident. So now he can't find any work, so he can't make any money. And so Aiden's, you know, trying to do the best that he can, but he's not an adult. So he's maybe about, what did I say, like 10 to 12, like somewhere in there. Maybe, I don't know, 10 might be a little young. Maybe like 12, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to see if it actually like mentions his age. So they're together, and Sir Anton and Aiden, and they're talking. And so they're just kind of like, how do I explain it? They're going over like being a warrior, like about wearing armor and all that kind of, you know, like guy stuff. They're talking about guy stuff. So he says, as if he could hear the sudden ghost of old pain, the old man continued, returning from the place that he'd been, just as Aiden's mother had. So his mother and Sir Anton were back in memory, remembering something. And then they returned to the present and to Aiden. He says, there's armor that we wear in the service of, for the glory of, the Lord. And there is armor we wear as protection against him. For he tests us always. He destroys the things that weaken us, and if we prove weak, he destroys us. He will not be served by the inferior. This second armor I speak of, nothing pierces, nothing destroys. It cannot be bought. Have you more money than a tear? And it cannot be made by any hand other than your own. Forge well, boy, and the world will never know that it can hurt you. and it will find some weaker man to torment in your stead. And that's the kind of way that, ooh, that gave me goosebumps. It's like, whoo, yeah. So that's her writing. It's really super intense. It's just dense, deep writing. It's not a lot of humor, but it's really, really good. It's really, really good. So anyhow, let me go over real quick while I'm thinking about it. So there are the 6 books of the series. We're looking at the Uncrowned King. So let me go over to my wiki on my website. Let me go over there. So I did add on the world page, and hopefully move this over here to this other monitor so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I did add the map of the world, and I did add the actual tours, which are like the little mini countries I was talking about in the Dominion of Anagar. So there they are. They're Averda, Calesta, Mancorvo, Oerda, Rivera, and Sorgasa. So Rivera is in the center, and that's where the leader of the Dominion, where he rules from. So that will be Valadin's throne if he wins. So if I can click on this, let me see if I can, okay, yeah, so I can make it bigger. Okay, so here you can see Esalion and Anagar, right? And up in the north, okay, so this is kind of the north, like here, I guess here. So you've got the Empire of Esalion is over here. There's Averlin, that's the capital city of Esalion. And then over to the west, you've got the free towns, and then Breo Danir. And Breo Danir is what the location of the Hunter series. That's where that kind of takes place. And then you've got the Western Kingdoms, which they're not talked about very often. You've got like this big forest over here in the west. And then as you go down, you get to the south. This is the Dominion of Anagar. And these little lines outline the different, I guess they're taurines. I think that's what they're called, taurine. So you got Mancorvo, Averda, there's Rivera in the middle, Sorgasa and Oerta are down in the south. It's kind of like deserty down here. So it says Desert of Sorrows. So the 4th book takes place down here. And this is where the Tor Leon is, and that's where Valadin's throne would be. That's where his dad ruled from. And they've got this big mountain chain here between the two. So the most important ones will be these northern 3, Averda, Rivera, and Mancorvo. So I was happy that I was able to kind of, take a picture out of the book of the map and put it there so that I could put it here on this page. So you can come out and check out the rest of the wiki if you want to. It's here on my main site at celestialrealms.com, and it says here Sun Sword Wiki, and you can come and check that out. Let me go ahead and hide that one, get back to our regular screen. So anyhow, I will probably at some point end up having to replace all of these books, because I can already see, I don't know if you can see here, it's starting to like rip down here in the corner. So I'll eventually probably have to replace them all. I will probably, since I already know all of these events that go on in this book, I will probably go ahead and move on to the Shining Court so that I can start taking notes for the next review, overview thing that I do. And I'll just continue on with the series, and then I'll move on to the House War series. But these books are, how many pages is The Broken Crown? The Broken Crown is 764 pages. So they're beefy books, and they all are for the most part. I mean, some might be a little smaller than others, but not by much. So you're talking at least, 3,200 pages, 4,200 pages Can I do math? No. So anyhow, that is my review of The Uncrowned King by Michelle West. I recommend these books highly if you like epic fantasy, if you like books with lots of characters and a lot of political intrigue. It's kind of Game of Thrones-ish, I guess you could say. It's just that she has like this particular style about how she writes that just makes it just enjoyable to read. Like, I didn't like reading the Game of Thrones first 2 books that I read. I didn't like it. I got bored. And the same thing happened with Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. Long stretches of books were just like snore fest. It's like, oh my God, can he just move it along? And sometimes I think that writers just want to like just pad stuff out to make their books fatter because they know that, oh, fantasy people, they love fat books. But no, like, you need to have something going on, or explaining something, or meaning something, or whatever, something of depth going on. And she doesn't like really do that. There are very few times in these books where I was like, oh, this is so boring. Like, I can't even think of one in these 6 books. I can think of some maybe in the House War series, but I think it was more because what's going on is so esoteric to the story. You're like, I don't even understand what's going on here. And it's not out of boredom. It's just like you don't understand what's going on. So go ahead and pick them up. You can get them on Amazon. I'm not an Amazon associate because I tried that once, and if you don't make sales, they just kick you off the program. So go ahead and just pick them up where you can. You might even be able to find them at a used bookstore or even a thrift store. But regardless, I recommend them. So I will see you on the next one. I'm going to edit this little video. I'm going to kick my dog out of my room. No, I think she fell asleep. Yeah, I think she fell asleep, so I guess I'll just leave her there. Oh, well, you know how it goes. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. I'm going to probably play some Palia, and that's over on Gaming with Kale if you want to watch that. It'll probably be like, you wouldn't, like, it'll take me a little bit to edit this and get it uploaded and so on and so forth. By that time, who knows what time it'll be, but I'll be playing Palia later on this afternoon. So enjoy the day. Take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.